Hi, I'm Tamara Berg. Leave it to me to bridge the gap between scrapbooking and jewelry making. I'm going to show you a page layout that uses a clever stitching technique that works for themes anywhere from nautical to engineering to travel. To make this project, we're working with the Bridges kit from Club Scrap, and we're starting with our foundation page. We've got this nice brown paper, and it's got an interesting technical drawing sort of look on the sides, and we've got these marks here which indicate where we're going to be punching our holes for the stitching that's going to come next. So I'm just using a little punchy tool. I've got a cork board behind this, and I'm just going to punch through where those pre-marked holes are made. And when those holes are all punched, the page will look like this. Now that the holes are punched, we're going to start with our stitching technique. And we're using the needle and waxed linen thread that comes in this kit. And if you're doing a 12 by 12 page like we are, we're going to use 14 feet of this waxed linen thread. Now, if you're not comfortable using a thread that long, because it can get a little bit unwieldy, you can do this in sections. So we're going to start with this hole right here. And we're going to stitch it from behind. Just bring that needle and thread all the way through. And we're not going to worry about tying knots or anything like that on this linen thread. We are just going to tape it on the back when we're finished. For now, we're just going to leave it there. So now we're going to take our needle and we're going to go to this hole all the way opposite on the other side, and we're going to stitch through there. So go ahead and stitch through that pre-punched hole. Okay, now the next part of the stitch goes on the underside of the paper. So we're going to the hole right next to the one that we just went through, but this time we're stitching from the back. So just take your needle, run that through the hole, and this stitch, you want to make sure that it's on the outside of the first stitch that you made, and that's going to be true for all the stitches that come after this. So just pull that tight, and we've got our first suspension cable finished. Now, I'm a jewelry designer. I use beads. I can't do anything without adding a little sparkle. So we are going to use some beads from Beaders Bistro from Club Scrap. Every month they create complimentary kits that have beads and little embellishments and doohickeys that you can add to your projects. Now we've got the beads on, we're going to do our next stitch, and we're going to keep in the same plane that we've been working on. We're just going to the next empty hole. So we're going through that one from the top. And do make sure these are nice and tight. And then the next empty hole, we're going to stitch from the back again to begin our next stitch. Add a couple of beads. I think of these as sort of like being the twinkle lights on the bridge. Do they put twinkle lights on bridges? I'm not sure. Anyway, adding a little sparkle to our suspension cables. And then now here we've got the first one filled, the second one filled, we're going to the next one. Just go to the next empty hole is basically how we're doing this. Again, on the outside of the stitches we've already made. And now, again, stitching from the back through that pre-cut hole. So we're pulling our thread nice and tight. See how nice and tight those are here? Adding beads. Then you're going to go to the next empty hole and continue that all along until you fill up all the empty holes. And when you're finished, it's going to look like this. Isn't that beautiful with all the beads on the suspension cables? We've got a couple of beads on each one. Very pretty. Now I want to show you the back of this because we did do this one in sections. Just showing you that it doesn't matter if you want to work with a really long cord or if you want to do it in sections. Just make sure you tape down your ends. That's key. We're going to set that aside and move on to our photo mats. So we've got our photo mats and our coordinating papers that we're going to use for embellishments on this page. And we're going to start with this one that has the architectural sort of drawings on it. And what I'm going to use is a color duster and add to that some walnut stain ink. And just sort of distress the edges of this card. Get them nice and beat up. Get Getting plenty of that walnut stain ink on there. Okay, so when that's finished, we're going to have it looking roughly like this. And then we've also got our photo mats with that distressed edge, and we've attached the photos to our photo mats. So now it's time to embellish this card, and we're going to add some three-dimensional elements to this. I'm going to use this very fancy, very snazzy paper clip from Beaders Bistro, and I'm going to add some beads onto this. Shocking, adding beads. I've opened up the paper clip just a little bit in order to make it easier to thread the beads onto this paper clip, and I'm just, no pattern here at all, just adding them on randomly. So now that we've got the beads added on, I'm just going to fold that back into the original position. Then we're going to add a ribbon brad and add a little bit of ribbon to this. So we're just going to thread it through this very fuzzy, very fancy ribbon and tie that onto the top of our paper clip. Just plain old overhand knot. And there we have our pretty little ribbon embellishment. I'm going to trim off those edges just a little bit there. Now this is going to go through the hole at the top of this card, and we'll just open up the brad. And you can do journaling on this card. We'll use that in a little bit. Now we're going to make another little beaded embellishment, and we're using a fiber here. We've already tied one of our ribbon brads on with just an overhand knot and just put on our beads there. Now I'm going to show you how to make the knot at the next ribbon brad. And this is a little bit of a jewelry making technique, and so I think it might be helpful to learn how to do this. So what we're doing is we're just tying another overhand knot with that ribbon brad within the knot. Now we're going to pull that knot up, still keeping it loose. Don't tighten it. Still keeping it relatively loose until it's right up close to where your beads end. Then we're going to take needle nose pliers and we're going to grab onto the stationary part of our knot right here and keep that where that is, and then we're going to pull and tighten the knot. Then once you've got it snugged right up close to your beads, then you can pull it out a little bit tighter. And so what ends up happening is you don't get a lot of space between your very last bead and your knot. Then we just clip the ends, and when that's finished and added to our other card, it will look like this. Now we're going to assemble our page, and we're going to use photos of me on a bridge for this page. And so we've got them here. I'm using Zots to attach these photos to our paper. I'm using the small size, but they also come in 1/2 inch and 3-dimensional. Just pulling off that backing and got our photo ready here. I'm going to slide it under our suspension cables. Next we've got the other one of me on the bridge. And then we'll put me maybe right there. Okay, and there's me on the bridge. Okay, now we're going to attach our cards. This one could be used as a journaling block, and believe me, I got plenty to say about travel, so we could definitely have, I don't think this is enough room to write about what I think of the Tower Bridge. I think it's quite a beautiful setting, an amazing bridge, and a really beautiful place to go, right next to the Tower of London, where they have the crown jewels. Okay, then we have our next little embellishment we're adding. Place it down there. And there we have our finished page. Tamara on a bridge themed page. So you're not into bridges. Trisha calls this method of scrapbooking assembly line scrapbooking. She makes the pages before she has the photographs. So look at how we've taken the exact same stitching technique with the beads, the same foundation page, but this time made the accents in pink because we've got a cute little girl with a pink bicycle. And isn't it interesting how the spokes mimic the girder stitch that we made over here? Now we've also got a smaller scale page over here that has a ladies' night out, again with that same stitching and beading technique, done on a little bit smaller scale. And I think this time, not spokes, not suspensions, but this time fishnet stockings are what this reminds me of. Or you can work on a really small scale, and we've got a card here with that same stitching technique. So whether you're working on a big scale like the Tower Bridge in London or a small little footbridge, whatever you choose, make something beautiful. We'll see you next time.
For step-by-step instructions on how to create this week's project, download the design guide featuring special make-it-your-own bonus tips.